first episode of the Mindset Chronicles. Here at Minds on Music, we decided that we wanted to have some of our highly accomplished parents be able to tell us a little bit about the mindset of how they got to the top of their field. What we find is our students, they practice, they work so hard, they're doing such a great job with their music. But sometimes to get to the very top takes a little bit extra mindset. And so we wanted to take a chance and pick the brains of some of our highly accomplished parents. We have the best families in the whole world here at Minds on Music. And our very first Mindset Chronicles master is Ashley Brown. So Ashley is a Gulf Breeze native.
Yes,
she has the number one job in the whole world, and that is Emmeline's mom.
That's right.
And Emmeline is taking her lesson right now as we're doing this, so it's great. Ashley made her Broadway debut as Belle in Beauty and the Beast. And she is the original Mary Poppins on Broadway.
Yes.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Ashley has also been a headline performer with every single North American symphonic organization, and she was the headliner for the Boston Pops, the New York Pops, and also with London's Royal Albert Hall. She now lives in New York City, except now in the situation that we're in.
Yes.
She's in Pensacola Beach with her husband and daughter, Emmeline. So welcome, Ashley.
Thank
We're
you.
so glad to have you.
I'm happy to be here.
Going through your life, I want to hear about your mindset as a child. What was the very first thing that sparked your interest and where you decided, I want to be a singer?
I think what first sparked music in me especially is I started singing at church. And I loved it. And I'm the youngest of four, and my mom played the piano a little bit, but it wasn't like forced. It was just something that I found, and it found me, and I was just so in love with music. And as a kid, I sang in church, but I was just, I got solos eventually, but I just felt I was like any other kid in the children's choir at church who loved to sing and loved to be there on Thursdays with their friends. But then after a while, I remember thinking, I love this, I want to be here every day. I want to actually go home and practice. I had a little bit of a different take on what church choir meant to me and how much I looked forward to it. So I think that was the first spark in me for sure, was I love this. And then I started singing, and like I said, nobody really in my family was in music, so no one was waiting for me to become a soloist or waiting for me to be a singer at all. But I started getting picked for little solos at church, and then it just was she's really good, and then I really enjoyed it. But of course I was 8, 9 years old. There's a lot of little kids that sing beautifully in church at that age. And one of my mom's favorite stories is, of course, I'd sing around the house constantly, but she said that one day she was sitting in church and I was singing a solo, and the woman next to her goes, "Well, church right here in Gulf Breeze, the United Methodist Church." And she goes, "Well, I didn't know Ashley could sing." And my mom goes, "Me either." And she goes, and the rest was history. And then it was just what can I do? And of course, my parents were always wanted to just make sure I had the opportunity to sing and to do what I love. And I'm very appreciative of that. They didn't really know. They always say they wish I came with an instruction booklet, because they're like, what do we do with this child? How do we give her the outlets that we need? But they did, just by supporting it and always allowing me to do it.
Now, as an adolescent, when did you realize that your mindset had to become different from your peers?
I felt that, I was in the Pensacola Children's Chorus starting in elementary school and all the way through high school. And I started taking voice lessons not until freshman year of high school. A lot of people are shocked that I started. To some people that's very late. Mm-hmm. And I guess I realized I loved it so much. It was never, and that's what I appreciate so much about my parents, is they never gave me an ultimatum. They kind of I never could quit mid, whether I signed up for sports which was never my forte, but sometimes I just wanted to do what my friends were doing. But even if halfway through volleyball, I realized I didn't like it, but Mom said, okay, well, you're finishing it, but you don't have to go back next year. And so that is something that I appreciate so much, is everything was my choice. I wasn't forced to do voice lessons or forced to do choir or forced to do anything. I got to choose. I mean, we had to have activities. We weren't sitting around by any means. But we were able to choose our own journey. And so and I remember in high school, there was a vocal competition that I was in, and it was the same time as homecoming. And again, in high school, that's a big deal. Yeah. Looking back to as adults, you're like, obviously you would do the vocal competition, but it's not obvious when you're 16. And I remember Mom said, I want you to choose what you want to do. But this vocal competition, it was my voice teacher, Deborah Ross, who's in Pensacola, who I still take with. It was a big deal. It was a big scholarship. It would go to my resume for colleges. It had a lot of perks because I always had the ability, thanks to my parents and people I was around, to see beyond high school, to see beyond college. Like, what long-term goals do you want? Because you're planting the seeds now for what is after today, what is after next year, and years after that. And so to be given that visual as a kid really helped me being like, oh, there is life after this. So to make decisions that you would be proud of in a couple years, 5 years, 10 years. And again, as a 16-year-old, that's still kind of hard to grasp. But I remember my mom being like, do you want to go to the dance? Which would have been a fine choice too, or a vocal. And I chose to go to my vocal competition. And that I remember that being a really hard decision for me. And I'm sure my life would not be much different if I hadn't chosen the vocal competition. But it was those kind of choices that I always wanted to make, to be how do I reach these long-term goals that I want? And so I think that's where I realized my mindset was different, as I genuinely would rather have gone to the vocal competition that I had been working for and working towards, and to see where I stood amongst other performers around the country. And, I'm from this little town, like, how do I not size up, but am I able to compete in this situation, in this business? And just to see where I was, and I won. And it was just another another feather in my cap, like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. I'm going in the right direction. And all my family, of course, not knowing what to do with me, trying to give me outlets, and my voice teacher, who was so supportive of me. And it just was another, like, okay, I'm on the right path. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Just those little signs that you're in the right place. And so I feel like that's where I realized I was unique and different, is that I would rather be singing and I would rather be practicing any day of the week than doing really anything else, which is, not always normal. Or normal,
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, as you approach your high school graduation, I'm sure there were many options for career fields at this point, with a million different influences pointing you in a million different ways. How did you decide on the field that you ended up choosing?
That's a really good question. I feel like I was one of those rare people where it can be hard but easy, because so many people are like, I wish I knew what I wanted to be when I was little. But there's also some that's hard too, because I knew what I wanted to do so soon. I didn't know that it would definitely be Broadway or musical theater, but I knew like music was going to be like forever for me. What I didn't know exactly like how, or like 100% my life, my side job, whatever, because we know what I do is extremely hard. It's competitive. There's thousands and millions of people who want to do what I do all around the world. And so I knew it was going to be a part of my life. So I knew going in what I wanted to do. But I mean, I didn't know whether I wanted to go. I always was classically trained. And so I was like, do I do opera? But I always danced my whole life. I was more attracted to musical theater. And even though I was trained classically, like, I wasn't able to hang with like the women from the Met. You know what I mean? Those big voices, even though I'm classical. I just was like, I just feel my personality and what I like to do on stage was more in the musical theater field. And in high school, I was accepted to the Broadway Theater Project. And this is where my whole life changed. And it was in Tampa, Florida, and it was with Anne Ryan King, and I mean, I got to dance with Gwen Verdon, Gregory Hines. I got to that's where I first met Julie Andrews. I mean, if we all knew how foreshadowing that was. I mean, it was just one of those things where I knew everyone around the world was auditioning for this project. It was no camp. It was not for the weary. It was like real world. We had, high schoolers. We were in rehearsals from 10 to 6, rehearsing for a show at night. I mean, again, that's where I knew, I'm like, normal people wouldn't thrive here. But it really kind of got us ready for the real world very young, and showed us like what it takes to be in this business, that you have to be a really good actor, you have to be a really good singer, and you have to be a really good dancer, and one is not enough. It thickened our skin. We dealt with rejection. We dealt with very real world things, and it was very hard, but at the same time I was like, okay. But again, there I was given solos and a lot of positive reinforcement. I was also given some thick skin and told what for, and they pushed me and they broke me down and built me back up. And I just remember being like, if I can do it here, and I still was able to get solos and I was chosen a bunch, I was like, I think I can do this. And people in the business that I respected so much were giving me a lot of positive reinforcement, and just saying how they were like, I can't believe you're only 15 and you can sing like that, and all those. And here I am, this little girl from Gulf Breeze, being like, wait, I can hang with like y'all? Like, I can't believe this, And so, I mean, all of it was just like, I felt like I was just being slapped with goodness. But at the same time, I was willing to grow and wanted to know how to be better. I never wanted to be one of those people that wanted to be coddled. I wanted to grow and to be told the truth. And so I thrive on that. I don't want people like, oh, you're so, and then if I have work to do, I'm like, no, tell me how to get it done. Mm-hmm. And that's always how I was too. And I think that's very important for any artist or any person, is to be willing to take the critiques and willing to grow and know that it's okay to not know everything. I still don't know everything. And to be always just open to growth, I think, is just what I think has helped me be successful for sure, is to learn from people above, below, with you, because there's always something to learn. You can never be too good of a singer, too good of an actor, too good of a person, really, And so I feel like that's the Broadway Theater Project changed my life, and it definitely made me go, okay, I'm going for it. I'm going for the big colleges. And so when I got accepted to the Conservatory of Music in Cincinnati, at that time it was the #1 musical theater school in the country. And so the people who wrote my references from Broadway Theater Project, his name is Dave Clemens, and he was like, if you can get into CCM, the Conservatory of Music in Cincinnati, it's the #1 program in the world for musical theater, you go. And I was like, well, do you think I even should audition? Like, am I even like remotely like good enough to even enter the room? And he was like, absolutely, you go. And I'll never forget, I was at Gulf Breeze High School with Miss Timmons, who's still there, Margie Timmons, the drama teacher. I happened to be in drama when my letter arrived. My mom brings it up, and they were like, it's thick, which usually meant like you get in, because you didn't have to fill out all the paperwork. And I crumbled to my knees, because not only did I get in, but I got one of the largest scholarships. And I remember calling everybody who wrote my references and was like, I got in. And so it made my decision very easy, because I only auditioned for a couple of other schools. And so I was like very nervous, because I'm like, I only have 3 options. But I got into, and it was just another one of those like, oh, thank you, Lord, because all my work, all my choices, it was one of those moments where I'm like, it's all coming together and it's all paying off. Those daily things, those daily grinds, those voice lessons where things weren't clicking, those voice lessons where I wasn't progressing as fast, or with my acting coach, things weren't, we all have days as people, musicians, whatever you do, where things just don't feel like it's going anywhere. But, it's like you always reach a plateau and you just got to keep at it. And it was one of those, I've had many of those moments in my life, which I'm so thankful for, that have reminded me that these are those days where you don't feel good about yourself or feel beaten down by a lesson or the business or an audition or interview or anything. It's like, okay, those moments where I kept going are paying off. And so that's, I always try to remember in those moments of success to be like, okay, clock that, we're moving somewhere, And then the next time I don't get it in rejection, you're like, you get knocked down a few. But I think it's just all about persevering through those hard days, because that's when you grow.
Excellent. I believe that the very first steps are usually the toughest. I always say that everything is awkward at first.
Yes.
And then it becomes comfortable, and then it becomes natural. But you can't skip the awkward part.
No.
Right? And so
I wish we could.
I know, everything is awkward at first. So when you were set in your career path, what kind of goals did you set then for yourself, and how did you go about achieving the goals after that?
A few things. When I was in college, I remember the goals I wanted to do or to keep up with, like short-term wise, I went to a very competitive school. And what we do is very competitive. And, also in college, we're supposed to be friends with everybody in our class, but we're competing against everybody in our class, but we're trying to get better ourselves, and we're growing. And those college age years are just so, it's just full of growth and full of like you said, just awkward and just like, what am I doing? Who's what and what's who? And so for me, my short-term college goal was just to stay in my lane. I still have some of my best friends ever from college and high school, but just to never get caught up in what other people are doing. It's just your kryptonite. And I still have to work on that. It's like, I always put like what I call my horse blinders, where I'm like, I'm so happy for everybody's success, but you don't ever want to feel like you're the horse in the back. You want to feel like you're, continuing in the race. But that's helpful for me, to just be like, there's only one me, there's only one them, and just to know that I have what it takes, and, to be able to stay in my lane, and I wanted to get better every day and compete with myself of what, how do I get better? I don't want to be better than her, I don't want to be better than him. But how do I make myself better than the last time? Whether that's emotionally, mentally, personally, vocally, as an actress, whatever that might be at that time, has always helped me achieve my goals, is just kind of, knowing and having trust of when it's your time and when it's your turn. And knowing that if you put in the work, you will have an opportunity. It might not be exactly what you wrote down on paper, but if you're open to, I'm like, oh, well, this is actually exactly what I asked for. Not in the same way I kind of thought, but when you really break things down. And of course, long-term goals, I always wanted to be on Broadway when I was in school. And I worked on my weaknesses when I was in college. And whenever I teach, I'm like, that is so hard to do as a student. I was born to sing. I felt comfortable singing. I could get up in front of my peers and sing a million songs and feel really cute about it. But I knew I had to work on doing a monologue. Really, really scared me. Doing those kind of things. But I'm like, you know what? Let's do it in college when people still care. Because I moved to New York City, and they just want you to be good. They want you to be the part, and they're not here to like coddle you. And so I worked on my weaknesses a lot in college because I wanted to be on Broadway. And then I remember when I was asked to be Belle, and after I wasn't asked, I auditioned a lot. So let me make that very clear. They didn't just like come to my door like, hey, do you want to play Belle on Broadway? So I definitely auditioned. So I guess let's make that clear. And of course I always wanted to originate a role on Broadway. And I know Mary Poppins, of course, is already well beloved and known, but to fill those shoes was very intimidating. And so I've been so fortunate where I'm able to continue to make new goals. I was able to be on Broadway in one of the most beloved characters in movies of Beauty and the Beast, and then a couple years later I was there originating a role, and it's insane. I still sometimes can't believe it's my life, and that am able to keep creating new dreams. And the symphony career, I was playing these characters, and I was doing 8 shows a week on Broadway, because before even Belle I was doing a show called On the Record. So I was doing 8 shows a week for about 6 years, and again, not for the weary. This whole business isn't for the weary. And it's an excruciating schedule, but it's amazing all at the same time. And so I went doing my solo show with symphonies, because I'm like, I've been playing Belle and Poppins, and I was doing concerts around New York City, and I was like, how weird that I get so nervous to be myself, even though I'm very comfortable in my own skin as a person. But on stage, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just so used to playing these people and these characters. And so I started this symphony path being like, I want to see who I am. Like, how do I go and dress like Ashley, talk like Ashley, sing all kinds of different styles? And that's kind of why I went on that path, to just kind of even get into my own skin, just without the lights and the costumes and the wigs. And that's been very fulfilling for me. It's a little looser of a schedule, so we chose to start a family in that time. And so, I mean, I know I kind of just went off, but it's just kind of all the goals that I've been able to keep making and having and creating for myself.
In your journey to become the best in your field, I'm sure you happen upon negativity, disappointment, rejection, loss of hope, lack of balance between professional and personal life. What are some of the key concepts that kept you going when times got tough?
That's a very good question, because I want to make it clear that even though I have had a lot of success, I have experienced every single thing you listed. I mean, every single thing. I think when you're a person who is passionate about something, loves something, what I do is a lot of my identity, whether you agree with that or not, it's the truth. And I feel, because as musicians, I feel what we're doing is so personal. You're not handing in a paper, you're not taking a test, it's how you make people feel personally. So when you don't get a job or somebody says you're to this or to that, it's personal. It feels like it's personal. I don't even know how else to say it. It's attacking your being. It's not attacking necessarily just your work, because our work is within our bodies and our minds and our hearts. And the years and years we put into cultivating what we have and everything. When somebody says you're not good enough, or you didn't get the part, or I wish you looked more like this, it's hurtful, no matter how much success you have. I think you could talk to, Glenn Close, and she probably could, she's one of my favorite actors, but I bet even though we think she's been given it all, she's been able to do musicals, Broadway, movies, all the things. I guarantee you she can say she felt all those emotions too. Because it's, no matter how successful you are, you're just going on different playing fields. You're just competing with different people. You never stop. You never stop wanting to be better or wanting to get the job. You're on different tiers, and that's, I guess, is the best way to describe it, is the playing field, dude. It's just different. It's not better. It's not worse. It's just the same. And I still have to audition, and I still get rejected. And what I have to do is, I've learned, this has taken me a while to learn this, because I'm a perfectionist beyond belief, which is something I've had to work on, because it can be good for so many things, but it can also be not good for self-preservation, if you will, of like the keeping going. And so what I've learned is, I used to get really upset and just down on myself, and I'm horrible, and I'm a horrible singer, and I'm ugly, and I can't do this, and all those things. And because you're being told what you are by so many different people. We're told, she's to this, she's to that. And then they are always like, one week they'll be like, oh, we wanted her to be warmer, funnier. And the next week they're like, we wanted her to be more cold and more harsh, and you're just like, wait a second. So in your head, you're going like, so many people are telling me what I am. So that's when you start having to go like, all that matters is who I am. Like that, you can't because they're casting a show. You know what I mean? So they're saying what they want for the character. They're not necessarily saying what they are, but inside you have to know, like, they're casting a show. They're not telling you how you're supposed to live your life. And so I think, and then I went through a period of time where I'm like, oh, I'm fine. I didn't get it. I don't care. Whatever. And then I went through that, and I was like, okay, well, this isn't working, because that's not honest. That's not true. I did want it. I did care. I worked really hard. I hired 3 coaches. I spent money. I rented a studio in New York. Money went into this, and I just didn't get it. Like, of course I wanted it, or I wouldn't have put all that work into it. And so now how I kind of deal with rejection and loss of hope or anything like that is, I admit, you know what? I really wanted it. I'm really upset. This is a huge bummer. I let myself be sad for about 24 hours. And then I put my big girl panties back on and get back out there, because it's the only way to do it. Accept that you're sad, accept that it's disappointing, and then you got to get back out there. Because I feel like, but again, that's me evolving through this business and having highs and lows and mediums and coastings at times, and I think that's what's important is to, and also be careful of who you surround yourself with. If you feel like they're bringing you down, they probably are. And it's not about being like, oh, they're jealous of me, and they're like, it's not that, because that's not how I roll either. I feel like a lot of times what everybody needs to remind themselves is, if somebody gets a part, if somebody books over you, they didn't book themselves. Like, it's casting, it's whoever, it's their decision. So don't take it out on people who are successful. They didn't choose themselves. Whether you felt they put in the work or whether they deserve it or not is really not your choice or what you should be spending your energy on. And so I feel like surround yourself with people who support and love you and are there when things are good and are there when things... When you're at a low, check your circle, is all I have to say, because you want people to be there no matter what. Friends, family, loved ones. And I think, I've always had an amazing support system with my family, and I have an amazing agent and manager who've been with me for so long. And I think this year especially, for all of us, has been such a good example of a huge loss of hope. Theater in general and any live performer has experienced a huge loss, we're almost handcuffed. We're the only business in the world that was just not happening. We couldn't work from home. Like, we could teach here and there, but we can't be on a stage. Like, we can't be anywhere with live performance right now. And so I've never ever thought, I don't think any of us thought that something like that would be taken away like overnight. It was just one day Broadway was closed and now we're all still waiting. Other companies were able to never stop. They just worked from home and so I've almost felt handcuffed this year, just kind of like, oh my gosh, because I've been lucky to always have been able to do what I do, luckily, after college. And so it's been very eye-opening and a huge lesson of trust and loss of hope, but still feeling hopeful. It's just kind of, I went through a period of time this year. That's why I was like, how do I make this positive? I'm moving to the beach. I'm going to be around my family. Love you, New York. I will be back. And, and to give Emmeline, my daughter, like being able to come here and work here with Miss Kat has been so awesome in piano and just be with our family. And so I think it's just always, like I said, just kind of riding the waves of the highs and lows and just always believing in yourself and knowing and having hope that you're doing the right thing. But you can't sit around and expect the good thing to come to you. You got to work. You got to, even when you don't feel like practicing or rehearsing or doing whatever you do, go. Because you will feel better when you're done. Because if it's what you love and it's what's in your heart, like, that's what gives me, is I sometimes just go and sing somewhere. Or I've been recording and doing some demos. And so, I've been lucky to have some outlets work-wise. But, it's like you have to just do it. And especially this year, it's just, think about what everybody's done this whole pandemic. We've all reached for the arts. Everybody's at home watching Netflix. Everybody's streaming shows. There's Broadway shows being streamed. Everybody's leaning towards listening to their music. And that's all streaming from arts. And it's all streaming from people and musicians and actors. And so it's kind of, the irony is...
It is. We're at an all-time high enrollment.
See?
People are wanting to learn.
Yeah, they're wanting to learn new skills. And that's, what it's all about, is just trying to persevere through this hard time, no matter what you do, whether you're a performer, musician, or not. It's just all about keeping the hope and, that things are already getting better. And I think that's a lesson that I've always tried to keep in my heart pre-pandemic, is just, even in the lows and rejection and all negativity, it's just kind of, we each have a choice. We all have a choice who we're around, and we each have a choice on how things move forward. We're in charge of ourselves. That's why I tell Emmeline every day, you're in charge of yourself. Wow. Your own decisions and how we react to things and the decisions we make. She's 4, so we're talking about running away from the teacher or choosing to eat her lunch. So there's small things, but it's good to just always teach accountability from the top.
That's great. Well, these are excellent insights into what has made you the best in your field.
Oh,
and we are so thrilled for you to be our very first Mindset Chronicle.
Well, I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you
fun.
so much. And if you want to know more about Ashley Brown, she has her website, beautiful website.
Oh, thank you.
AshleyBrownOnline.com. See more about where she's going to be next. And thank you again for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.